Welcome to the Surfcast podcast, your weekly source for surf fishing discussions, tactics, interviews, news, and more. The Surfcast podcast is hosted by Jerry Audet and Toby Lapinski, two of the most dedicated and obsessed surf fishermen that you will ever meet. The tide is up, the wind is at our back, so let's hit the surf.
So yeah, last night was that's pretty good for almost December. I think, expectations are much lower this time of year. But man, this happened to me a bunch, and I'm sure it's happened to you too. I go there, and I'm like, I'm going to bring the lighter rod. I got the fly rod. I can't go I'm not going to bring the 8-footer or the 7-footer. I'm going to bring the 9. I'm using the 4,000 size reel. It's only got 20-pound braid on it. And I'm like, what's the chances I'm really going to run into something with some serious shoulders? And, I'm like, I'm not, what's the chances, right? And I got the fly rod, but then I'm getting hit. First cast, boom, I'm into fish on the redfin. And I'm like, okay, whatever, they're small. And then that first fish is like 30 inches. And I'm like, that I land. And I was like, uh-oh. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, okay, don't panic. It still might not be very good. And then the night goes on. I switch the fly rod. I told you that already. And I come back to the spinning rod after not catching anything with the fly. And that first fish back on the sluggo, solid mid 30-inch fish. And I'm like, oh God, this is heartbreak. If you hook up on a big fish, there's now you've only got a 30%, normally it's 100% at this spot, very low. If the hook pulls, but you're not going to break a fish off here. Yeah. Now I'm like, oh my God, this is one of those situations where you're like, this is the end of days, because I'm going to hook something special. Everything feels right. And then I'm going to lose it because I'm an idiot. And I brought the light gear because what? Because I want to have fun. Because I'm going to have fun with these dinks, And I felt like an idiot. I was like, I was only using a 30-pound leader. And I was like, you're a dumbass. You're going to pay. And they were on needles. So now they're hitting needles. And I'm like, this is bad.
No, that's the big, I hate that at the end of the season. I do the same thing. And I more often than not go heavy just in case. It never pays off. But I've done it the other side going light. And it just burrows into my head. And I can't deal with it.
Yeah. And I was just like, this is bad. I can't. Why am I here using this light gear? Anyways, this is the Surfcast podcast. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Toby.
And what are we talking about today, Toby? I'm so off track.
Yeah, right. We came in hot today. Hot and fired up. I guess that's what happens. This is perhaps one of the first recordings after a night of fishing. Granted, only by half of us.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and you know how it is. Fishing always gets me fired up, and I didn't expect that, and I wasn't even going to fish that spot. I was on to a different spot, so I'm all fired up. I got 5.5 hours of sleep. It's almost December. Feels like September. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a plan. We went off track. We could try to get it back on track. What we were looking to talk about.
Well, you get us back on track because I can't remember.
Well, when we met up with Frank Daniel recently, the discussion of the weighted junior, Adam Jr. came up, because how can it not? The story that he told in that recording of basically getting 2 fish on it just over a year apart on the same exact plug, and they were both over 50 pounds.
That's
just
right.
That alone, on any plug, like a good plug, a plug you trust, a plug that's a warrior, something you lean to heavily, as opposed to him the first night threw it, I think he said, because why not? It was just try this thing that Bob Pond had given to him to test out and play around with and see what happens.
Yeah,
and
he was babysitting a squid rod. He was bait on the bottom. Yeah.
Killing time, testing something new, said it came through the water like a dead dog, nothing, and he gets, just shy of a 52-pound fish or something.
Yeah.
And then doesn't fish it for over a year, mile or so, whatever it was, down the beach, throws it again, bang, another 50-pound fish. That's
mind-blowing.
there's so many bits and pieces and aspects and parts of the story, but I mean, the thing that sticks out, if nothing else, most to me is the fact that fishing a dud plug, like a plug you have no confidence in, that plug that like you don't even know why you have it, why it's in your bag, why it's in your truck, why it's rigged up.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I remember him now. Of course, I remember it was an amazing story, and we talked about a lot of things with him. It's amazing to me that anyone would waste time fishing a lure that didn't have confidence in. But, on the flip side of that, I don't know why we don't fish lures that we know are effective and why we just don't want to use them. So that's this part, right? So he uses this lure, it's effective. He then puts it away, pulls it out again, gets another 50,
Yeah.
and then then just stops using it and doesn't use it again, like ever.
Yeah. That's right. He did say I don't think he ever used it again after that second one. It was just
No.
like, I'm done with this stupid thing.
And stupid thing. But I know you and I do that. I know you and I have lures that we know work, but yet we don't use. So you know what, Toby? I'm going to let you kick it off. I'm sure you have a list of a bunch because that's totally you. So you can kick this off.
I do, and I mean, I immediately jump to the standard whipping boy when it comes to this kind of plug talk, and for me, for a lot of people, it's the SP minnow.
Of course.
I mean, it perfectly falls into what you just said. It's something that produces, it catches well, catches in a whole wide variety. I mean, you can throw it on the Cape beaches, you can throw it in the canal, you can throw it in Rhode Island, you can throw it in breachways, you can throw it on South Shore of Long Island, you can hammer fish in New Jersey. Probably take it down to Florida and catch tarpon on this stupid thing. I know they catch tuna on them. Like, it's just, but that's almost like what turns me off from the thing. Like this so universal acceptance of it, and it came out of the gate so hot years ago that if you weren't throwing it, you were not surf fishing for a couple seasons, and it's just it's something that digs into my head, and it's like, you can't throw that thing now.
But why? I mean, I have a theory, and I'm leading you. But why?
No, I don't know. Well, it's funny too, because like I fished it for a while when it hit the scene, when the SP minnow was those first couple of years. I'm trying to think now. It was before my son Aiden was born. He's almost 11 now. I mean, it was before that thing.
Really
probably
that long ago? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Because I'm remembering where I went and bought the first one. It was this tackle shop that was in Hartford that is no longer there, and he was not born yet because where I was living at the time, so I know it was before him. So I mean, that's got to be, I don't know, I'd have to look it up, maybe 13 years ago, 14. It's been around that long. But I remember that first season or two, I was fishing the hell out of that thing, and I was catching but it became when I was doing the reports with the fishermen, it became the joke whenever someone would, when I was calling for the surf reports, if they said people are hammering on the SP minnow, I'm like, of course, it's the skunk killer. And it just became the skunk killer was what I would start referring to it in the reports. And I don't know, I can't accept throwing something like that.
Yeah, so I think on my short list of plugs, I feel the same way about it, and it's not fair. I mean, and I'll be the first to admit it. It's not fair to throw so much shade, so much hate at this thing. But I do. Look, me and my friend Brett's an eel guy. Brett's an eel guy through and through. He doesn't want to tinker. He doesn't want to mess with lures. He doesn't want to have to tune. He doesn't want to have to load. He just wants to fish. And that's why he's an eel guy. And not to be, I hope that doesn't sound derogatory. Yeah, I'll probably get kind of derogatory towards eel guys at some point. But that wasn't meant to anyways.
But it's okay, because I throw eels too, so.
Yeah. You were just doing it the other day. Yeah. So, but he says, if I'm going to throw something, I'm going to throw the SP minnow, and he throws a Danny too, actually, which is two unbelievably different lures. But those are basically the only things he throws. And he's like, I don't know why you don't like it, Jerry. It catches all the time. It catches, he's had plenty of bites, mid 20-pound fish. He fishes it straight out of the box. He didn't even change the hooks, which just gives me like an ulcer. I'm like, this is why I have a stomach pain,
I will say, at least when I fished it, I upgraded it. I even did a video that I think is over 1 million views on YouTube about beefing it up and using, the split ring with the swivel on the belly hook. So I mean, I was into the thing for a while.
Yeah. So I think for me and you, I think this points to even a little bit about why we're surfcasters. But I think for me, when things get too popular, I get turned off. And I think this is a little bit of the like rock and roll lifestyle, of which I do not live, but sort of ascribe to some of those punk ethics, ethos, whatever, where it's like, I'm not, as Rage Against the Machine says, F you, I won't do what you told me. I don't want to use the SP because everyone else is using it. But that doesn't explain it, because then there's Super Strike. So that doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. I have one more theory, and then I'll kick it back to you. And this doesn't make any sense either, because then I'm going to give you one of my other ones after I let you go. But the SP Minnow is a throw it out and drag it back. Yes, you can swing it. Yes, you can jerk it. Yes, you can whatever. But for the most part, because of the lip, because of the action, because of the size, all that stuff, I believe it's generally a throw it out and reel it back. There's not the subtle playing with it presentation that you get with a lot of other lures like a needle or a soft plastic. But then again, I mean, a darter is kind of a throw it out, bring it back. So I don't know exactly. I'm going to go with that other thing where I just don't want to do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, because if like thinking that through even further, I mean, I'll throw red fins, and that's for me for the most part the same retrieve. A bomber, pretty much the same retrieve. The Yozuri mag minnow, like for the most part, I'm fishing all of those the same, and I don't have that feeling towards any of those. I mean, I don't throw those as much as I used to, but I don't hesitate. Like, I don't hesitate to throw a redfin in my bag when I think it could be right. Or the Yozuri, the mag minnow. I don't have a problem throwing that in. When I go to the Cape, I mean, I'm packing 6 of those Yozuri minnows in there.
That's interesting.
And maybe I throw the SP minnow, and really only for one beach, because there was one beach that I've fished up there that's deeper than everything else, and the SP does still produce better for me there. Like, that's the only place I think I throw it and don't feel guilty, like I'm cheating on myself.
Yeah, I don't know, because so that's really interesting, because I actually don't really carry many lipped swimmers anymore. There'll be nights where I don't have one in there. I tried really hard to carry the bomber this season because 2023 was the year of the bomber, which maybe we'll talk about that at some point too. But I started the bat right off the bat with a bite on bomber, which has not happened in a long time. But even then, I don't really carry. I mean, I carried it out of like obligation. But if you're carrying other ones, you're carrying 4 or 5. It doesn't make a damn bit of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, weird. The night this spring when I had decent fish on one, I probably had 5, because I remember that night we had mixed cloud cover, I believe. I remember sometime I had darks, I had lights. Some of the dark ones on those have like a shine to them. So I mean, when I go in on those, I go all in. So again, it's not not a total opposition to the style. There's just something about the SP minnow that just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, and I mean, all kinds of people have said that. I mean, Zenos has said this a million times on publicly. I've heard other people. I won't put words in his mouth, but I think I've heard Dave say similar things, and Anderson, and but then again, like Bill Wetzel talks about, he loves them, and I know that there's plenty of other good anglers who like they work great. I think Dennis is one, like Sam Broda. I don't want to put words in people's mouth. I could be completely wrong, so maybe just scratch that. But there's lots of great anglers who love them. So yeah. I don't know.
If I was a guide, like jumped in my head with Wetzel. If I was a guide, I'd pack half of my bag with that.
Yeah, that's true. So then what the hell are we doing? Right, so what are we doing?
Well, I guess, if nothing else, I mean, I don't think I ever broke 30 pounds on it. So a plug that I've ever used, like if any of the plugs that I use consistently, things that reserve a legit spot in my bag, I can at least say that not just the one time I got a 30-plus pound fish, like that's sort of the mark to hold a legit spot. And I haven't done that with the SPs. And again, I did fish them a lot early on. And I even fished them in the canal before the canal became what the canal insanity was a few years ago, which was around the same time that SP was kicking in and guys were hammering big fish. I never really did much on it, like bigger. And aside from like similar to the Yozuri Mag Darter, the one time my friend's cousin's uncle got a good fish on it, and it's not enough for me to pack it all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I was on an SP minnow bite once, and I put on the Bomber long shot, which I think that's even newer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I pulled out like a very high 20, borderline 30-pound fish, and I hadn't caught one on the SP minnow. I definitely don't have one on the 30 either, or 30 on the SP minnow either.
Yeah, they've been caught, I know, but I don't think it's just that. I mean, that's probably a piece of it, as I think of some of the other plugs out there, that it's not like that consistent producer of the bigger fish that we're after. And those are, like I said, the ones that if you've got limited space so that my bag doesn't end up looking like your surf bag on an average night,
right,
there's got to be a reason for why it makes it in mine or why it doesn't.
So what else, Toby? Let's stop beating up on the SP minnow. What else?
Geez. I mean, I guess since more of a larger category versus just the one, based straight off of Frank's disdain for the loaded Adam Jr., is for the most part loaded plugs. Like they've got a place at times, and I've got loaded, usually the redfin. I do load bombers for very, very select, like the old school long the 7-inch long A.
Okay, 17s or 16s?
17, yeah.
Yeah, so like the 17 size, yeah.
Yep. I have some of those loaded for real specific spots, scenarios, situations. I mean, I've got a dozen or so that are loaded, and they might not come out for a year or two. So I do have some, but in general, I just don't like those, definitely don't like the factory loads when they used to do that, for instance, on the red fins. But the other thing, if I'm loading it, it is getting loaded with liquid. I can't stand the baby rattle loaded red fins. That thing just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Whether it's in your bag and you're walking it, or you can hear it if you give it a jerk while it's out in the water. I mean, might it attract a fish? I guess, but there's just something about that damn baby rattle that turns me off.
So maybe we should call this the Surfcast podcast echo chamber, because I feel like we're just talking, we're just complaining to each other about the same things, because I feel the same way. Same way. I was able to purchase, when they were getting rid of it, 50, I think it's a 50-pound bag of birdshot. It's lead. So that's like what, 40 lifetimes of, enough lead to, I could give it to everybody on SOL and I'd still have enough. You know what I mean? So, and I loaded some. I hated it. I don't want more noise. That's especially in that plug. I don't want more noise in a redfin. I don't want a noisy redfin. I want a quiet redfin. And I think it swims better with the liquid. And I like the light load if I'm going to load. I agree with you. The factory load, I don't like that. I like it to be on the light side. If I can throw unloaded, I'm going to. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't like that either.
I did mess around a little while, like when there was another window in time when that BB load was, again, like first up the thing. You had to be fishing the BB loads, and I started not liking it. And I was doing a combo where I would take I came up with the right weight to get it where I wanted to. I'd put a couple of the lead shot in, and then the rest of the load to the weight that I wanted, I would do with the baby oil or mineral oil or whatever I was using in it. And that would give it kind of an interesting, different sound, which wasn't so obnoxious. But the thing that I found then, which might have been good in some situations, might have been bad, is then it would stick the lead in odd spots. And it would kind of throw the weighting off, which again could be good because it's throwing some erratic, just odd swims and tweaks and kicks to it. But I never really found it was worth the effort. But I did notice it did something different to it. So I think if I every once in a while I'll be digging for a redfin and I'll pull one out and I always shake it just to make sure, and I'll hear a couple of clicks in there. I'm like, oh, this is one of the combo loads that's got liquid and the BBs, and if it's a color that I want to fish for whatever reason of the night, I'll still fish it, but I will not fish a dry load.
Yeah.
BB load. The Super Strike bottle plug now comes loaded with BBs.
I know.
First thing I do is drill a hole, pour the BBs out, put liquid back into the same weight, seal it back up, and go. Even if I'm not going to fish it right away, before I get that done the moment I purchase it. So that, again, I don't like a baby rattle.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's one of the biggest and maybe the only slip up that Super Strike has made. I do not approve of that message of the BBs in that plug.
Steve's talked about that. I can't remember off the top of my head his reasoning, but there was something. Because I remember when he first did it too, I went to him on the side and was like, why?
Right.
What the hell are you doing here? Because it's not like all of the plugs now were BB loaded, meaning it was some sort of a cost thing or a production thing or anything. I mean, really, now he's adding an extra step to this one line. So why'd you do it? And he had a solid reason, and I support him. I said, all right, just means I got to drill the thing and reload it. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and actually, this raises a good. We could do a quick disclaimer right here, actually, too. Just because Toby and I hate him doesn't mean it doesn't work. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things we're actually pointing out is sort of our hypocrisy, because these things work and we don't use them. Because I mean, we just talked about the SP Minnow, and you know what? Perfect transition. I'm going to jump right into the next one. And you guys can all send me. Don't actually send me hate mail. I was going to say you can send me hate mail. Don't send me. Don't do it. Don't send me hate mail. But you know what? I'll admit it. I don't like to fish the bucktail. And I don't. And I know. I mean, I buy in 1,000% when someone says, well, I don't buy into this completely 1,000%. I buy in 1,000% that maybe it's, the most versatile universal lure or something like that. I could get on board with that, even though I would argue that soft plastics is even more, but then that's not fair because it's a much bigger category, whatever. I agree that you can, it works everywhere all the time. That sort of, that axiom that people use, if you can't catch it on a bucktail, it can't be caught. That's not, none of that's true, but it's close. I think that there's a lot of versatility there is what they're saying. I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. And this gets back to the SP Minnow. Even more so. It's like that times a million. Because I know how good it is. I know it works. I know it works in the spots I fish. I know I'm probably missing fish by not fishing them. And yet I don't. And the only explanation I can give you is this, and I'm going to throw it back to you. There's a spot that I fish. It's a lot of work. There's not big fish there. Well, so far, who knows what's going to happen in my lifetime. I just like it. And I go there because I like it. And I don't go there. I feel guilty oftentimes when I go there. I don't go there as much because, it doesn't produce big and I'm performance-wise, blah, 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 blah. So the surf is also an emotional thing. We make decisions that don't make any sense. Just like human, fallibility and our hypocrisy and all kinds of stuff that we do. Doesn't make any sense. That's the bucktail. This is me trying to justify the bucktail. There's just something that doesn't do it for me. And that's it. That is it. I am standing in my glass house hoping you're not going to throw a bucktail at it. That's what I'm saying.
Now, my only question back before I talk bucktail on my side, because I have a strange love-hate with it, is it everywhere you won't throw it? Or is it like meaning open surf and channel, outflow, river, stuff like that? Great question.
Yeah. I mean, I for the little I do it, I do enjoy throwing a bucktail in like a breachway situation or like an inlet situation. It's fine. That's fine. If it's blowing 40 knots steady, gusting higher, am I enjoying throwing a bucktail? Yeah, I am. But those are probably it. And I mean, we've talked about breachways a little bit, you and I, but I have a very mixed feelings about that. And sometimes I find it very fun and sometimes I found it very boring. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with if there's fish there or not. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is because for me, if I'm fishing a breachway, outflow type location, the bucktail jig is number one. I will pack all of my bag, that and maybe a couple of soft plastics. And I might not even fish the soft plastics on a given night, or I'll cycle back and forth, but I have no problem carrying a big selection of bucktail jigs in that breachway outflow situation. You get me in the open surf, and I've tried, I'll get to it in a second, a little bit positivity on this season, but like before, let's say before this fall even, I couldn't do squat in what I consider open surf situations on the bucktail. Even when it was big, nasty wind surf, those traditional like, oh, this is the only thing you can throw is a bucktail. Even in that, I would throw like a 9-inch sluggo and a 2 or a 3-ounce head because it worked. But in my mind, it was still more aerodynamic than the bucktail jig with the hair and the tail flapping. It's more like a straight missile going into the wind, and I could hold better. And it worked. And I also have caught in the open surf on soft plastic. So there was like that little mental game. I had already gotten over the hurdle. I didn't have to now, in crappy conditions, try to produce with something that under normal conditions I can't produce under. It was like that little easier acceptance and confidence was there. But I mean, I threw the bucktails for a couple of seasons. I literally packed them every time I went out in the open surf and said, I'm going to throw these. I'm going to catch. I don't know why I don't. And I stopped.
Yeah.
And then going into this fall, I was at one of my spots talking to a kid that I bump into there regularly. And we were talking about what we've been catching on, and I'm catching on my rubber reel, jig head combo like I do with, my primary in that spot. And he's like, for some reason I just started throwing a bucktail here this year. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I don't see any reason why I wouldn't. And he's like, yeah, I've taken some really good fish. And I told him, I was like, I still can't find myself doing it. I'm not going to. Next time I came back, he wasn't there. I packed a couple of bucktails in my bag.
Yeah, you tried.
And I started doing really well there on bucktails. And it was kind of cool. Like it gave a little like exciting shot to that piece of the season that on those nights in the past, it would be, my cycle of 2 plugs back and forth, 2, maybe a third, including the rubber jigs. And now I was throwing the bucktail in. I mean, that was actually one of those nights you caught up to me. And I don't know if you remember, I was like, I haven't even made it all the way to the rock we want to be in. And I've already got like 5 fish.
Yeah.
And they're all in the bucktail.
Interesting. Yeah. That's exactly. I mean, this is the thing. And I carry it. I carry a bucktail, especially in the fall. I'll carry. I adopted. I think I adopted it from Dave, which he probably adopted it from someone else. But I usually will carry a fairly heavy bucktail just in case. But then I never use it. It just sits in there, gets rusty, and I throw it away. Or not throw it away because I'm not gonna throw away lead. But you know what I mean. Then it's like I'm gonna limp this through, and then I know I'm not gonna use it, so then I just sharpen the hook, but it's not really sharp, and it's just rusty. La 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 la. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Toby, I know there's a long list. But we're already, man, this must be a hot topic for us because we've already been talking for a long time.
We got a lot of hate.
Yeah, I guess we got a lot of hate in our hearts here, huh? But is there any others that really stand out for you?
I mean, plugs, not really. I mean, I got a couple of funny stories which we can get to some other day on this subject matter, throwing decoy plugs on. We can talk about that at some point, which is just funny. But I mean, not really. I mean, I stuff I don't like, but I mean, those are the first that came to my mind when I said when Frank was talking the loaded Adam Jr. Immediately, like these couple things popped into my head. That was like right where I went. And anything beyond that, I really got to sit and think about. Not, which doesn't mean it's wrong. It's not genuine, but I like to jump the things that like come up with the answer immediately. That's the stuff that's hard and fast for me.
It's really funny that we have the same opinions. I will add this as we close out this edition. Tins are another one for me. Tins are another one for me that I know work because I've had personally good experience with them. Really fun memories. I don't fish during the day very much at all. If I'm going to fish during the day, I end up reaching for a top water. Except I don't really care about seeing the explosion. I don't care about seeing the fish. So I don't know why. I can't get over it, how small it is now. I can't get over how simple it is, I think. Even though I like simple and other plugs, I don't know. The tin is one that I think I really need to think about going into the 2024 season. This has been a weekly edition of the Surfcast podcast. You can find out more about the podcast and find more episodes at surfcastpodcast.com. And be sure to check us out on social media at the Surfcast Podcast.